I am going to conduct a social experiment. I will give 4 women in my life unlimited access to my resources for 1 week. No rules, no guidelines. Let's see who they really are when money isn't a constraint. Before we start, tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. When Damien Tan fired 3 of his top executives before breakfast, the market stayed calm. But when he smiled at his housekeeper that same morning, Singapore's most unshakable man felt his world tilt a little off balance. A sound disrupted the silence. Humming. Off-key, cheerful humming. Mei Lin. She moved through the open-plan kitchen below, singing to herself while cleaning the floor. The tune was wrong, the rhythm worse, and somehow it filled the air with something Damien had long forgotten existed in his home: warmth. He watched her for a moment, hair tied loosely, sleeves rolled up, unaware that her boss, the man whose signature could change markets, stood listening like a guilty schoolboy. The feeling irritated him. "Ms. Ong," he called, his tone precise. Mei Lin looked up, startled. "Mr. Tan, I didn't see you there. Sorry, I was, singing to the eggs." Damien blinked. "The eggs. They were cooking unevenly," she explained seriously, as if that made sense. Music helps them cooperate. He almost smiled, almost. Interesting culinary theory. Next time, perhaps conduct them in key. She grinned, unoffended. "No promises, sir." For a man used to obedience wrapped in politeness, her easy humor was disarming. Most people around him laughed only after checking if he was amused first. Mei Lin simply existed, genuine, uncomplicated. Dangerous, he thought, in her own small way. James Coe, his assistant of 10 years, entered with his usual quiet efficiency. "Sir, the reports from the partners have arrived. Also, the media is still speculating about your comment last night." Damien sighed. "They always speculate. Let them. May I also remind you, sir," James continued, "that Miss Lau called again. Twice. Vivian Lau, the socialite ex-girlfriend turned influencer who had once told the world she'd fallen in love with his brand. Not him, his brand. The memory tightened his jaw. He turned back to the window, staring at the city's glass and chrome perfection. "James, do you ever wonder what people would do if money didn't limit or define them?" James raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking philosophically or planning something concerning?" "Both," Damien murmured. James sighed. That tone never leads to good press. But the idea had already formed, clean, sharp, and inevitable. That evening, the penthouse glowed with amber light, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond. Damien stood before 4 matte black envelopes, each sealed with gold embossing. They looked like weapons disguised as gifts. "This," he told James, "is an experiment." "Oh, no," James muttered. "Not another one of your behavioral case studies. The last one nearly got us trending for all the wrong reasons." Damien ignored him. 4 women, 4 black credit cards. No limits, no instructions. "I want to see what they do when no one's watching." James folded his arms. "Manipulative. Observational," Damien corrected. "The truth reveals itself when temptation walks in with a smile. And the participants?" He listed them like pieces on a chessboard. "Vivian Lau. She'll spend to prove she's still relevant. Celeste Yeo, my assistant, who insists she knows strategy better than emotion. Clarissa Lim, daughter of the investor who thinks she can buy elegance. And Mei Lin Ong." James nearly dropped his tablet. "The housekeeper?" "Yes." "You're giving your housekeeper an unlimited credit card?" "She's a control group," Damien replied. "She's never asked for anything. I want to see what power does to someone who claims not to need it." James stared at him. "You call it science. I call it trouble." "Then we agree it will be interesting," Damien said, sealing the envelopes. The next morning arrived with a monsoon drizzle over the bay, soft, persistent, cleansing. Inside the penthouse, the 4 envelopes rested on the marble counter like prophecies waiting to be opened. Vivian was first. She glided and wrapped in designer silk, her perfume filling the space before her voice did. "Darling, I came because your text sounded mysterious." You know I adore mysterious things. It's simple, Damien said, handing her the envelope. A gift. Her smile sharpened. No limit. None. She tilted her head. Are you testing me, Damien? I never test people, he lied smoothly. Vivian left with the same gleam in her eyes she'd once had when she discovered a diamond sale. Next was Celeste Yeo, efficient, immaculate, the human embodiment of a spreadsheet. Sir, I prefer clarity. What's the purpose of this? Use it however you wish. Consider it professional freedom. Her lips curved faintly. Then I'll make strategic use of it. He knew she would, probably turning it into a network-building project before the day ended. Predictable. Clarissa Lim arrived third, late, smiling like someone who'd never had to hurry a day in her life. An envelope from the great Damien Tan? How terribly intriguing. He offered it wordlessly. She opened it, saw the card, and her laughter was soft and dangerous. You know what they say, give a girl a limit, she'll test it. Give her no limit, she'll test you. She winked and left, leaving the faintest scent of white jasmine and warning. The fourth envelope sat untouched until late afternoon. Mei Lin emerged from the service corridor with her cleaning cart, wearing her usual faded blue uniform, hair escaping its bun. She was humming again, something cheerful that didn't match the storm outside. Mei Lin, Damien called. She froze, immediately guilty. Did I sing too loud again? Surprisingly, no. Come here. He handed her the last envelope. She frowned. Am I being fired? Because if this is a fancy termination letter, I want at least a day's notice to eat all the leftover desserts first. He almost laughed. No, it's a gift. A gift? Open it. Inside lay the same black credit card, gleaming like a secret. She blinked. This looks expensive enough to pay off my apartment. It's yours for 3 days. No spending limit. Use it however you like. Wait, just like that? No rules? No trick questions? None. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Mr. Tan, when rich people say no strings attached, there are usually strings, ribbons, and a full orchestra hiding somewhere. Take it, Mei Lin. Consider it an experiment in generosity. She hesitated, then accepted the card gingerly, holding it like an alien artifact. You sure you're feeling okay? You didn't hit your head on a champagne bottle or something. I'm fine. Because last time you were fine, we had a week of silent breakfasts. Damien exhaled through a reluctant smile. You talk too much, Ms. Ong. And you brood too much, Mr. Tan. Maybe this car will balance us out. She walked away humming again, the card still in her hand. And for the first time in years, Damien wondered if he just lost control of his own experiment before it began. That night, the rain eased and the city lights returned, reflected in the wet streets like constellations. Damien sat in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him, while James scrolled through digital statements on his tablet. Transactions had begun, James said. Vivian, $10,000 champagne, private yacht booking. Celeste, high-end business seminars, new wardrobe. Clarissa, she's apparently hosting an art gala. Nothing surprising. Damien leaned back, uninterested, and Mei Lin. James hesitated. Air, neighborhood mini-mart, groceries, cleaning supplies, and 150 hot dog buns. Damien turned sharply. Hot dogs. Also paints, ribbons, and children's craft sets. He blinked. Is she redecorating the pantry or starting a carnival? James scrolled again. She also rented a van for tomorrow morning. The corner of Damien's mouth lifted. Now that, he murmured, is interesting. The next day, curiosity overruled logic. Damien's meetings felt empty, his lunch tasteless. By 2 p.m., he found himself driving a discreet black sedan through narrow streets of Toapeo, worlds away from his polished skyline. He stopped near a modest building painted in fading blue, with a sign that read Horizon Home for Children. From across the street, he saw the van parked out front. Boxes filled with toys, food, and decorations spilled from it, and Mei Lin, wearing an oversized poncho and a determined expression, was organizing chaos with cheerful authority. She didn't notice him. She was too busy laughing with a child who just dropped a balloon. For a man who'd lived in boardrooms and penthouses, Damien couldn't remember the last time something so simple stopped him cold. Without planning to, he crossed the street. "Excuse me," said a woman at the entrance, her smile kind. "Can I help you?" "I'm Damien Tan," he said. "I heard about a volunteer event here. Thought I'd contribute." Her face lit up. "You must be one of Mei Lin's friends." "She's wonderful, isn't she?" He wasn't sure how to answer that. "Yes, remarkably resourceful." Inside, laughter filled the courtyard. Paper lanterns hung unevenly between trees. Tables overflowed with food, and in the middle of it all, Mei Lin, wearing a ridiculous clown nose, trying to twist balloon animals while a dozen children shouted instructions. When one balloon popped, she gasped dramatically, scattering rubber fragments. "And that, kids, is what happens when a giraffe dreams too big." The children screamed with laughter. Damien found himself smiling, a genuine, unguarded smile he hadn't felt in years. Mei Lin noticed him then. For a moment, surprise flashed across her face, followed by exasperation. "Mr. Tan, what on earth are you doing here?" He spread his hands innocently. "Market research." "Market? Oh, no. Don't tell me you're inspecting my hot dog for ROI. Return on integrity," he corrected smoothly. "I wanted to see what your spending habits reveal about human behavior." She rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched upward. "You could have just asked instead of stalking the clown show." "You make a convincing clown," he said, watching her hand a balloon soar to a laughing boy. "I take that as a compliment, though I'm still charging you emotional damages." "I'll consider it a charitable donation." Their banter drew a few curious glances, but Damien didn't care. The rain-washed air smelled of food, paint, and laughter, an aroma he didn't recognize but somehow missed already. As the children ate, he joined her in serving plates. When one small girl tripped and began to cry, Mei Lin knelt immediately, her clown nose slipping off. Hey, it's okay. Let me see." She patched the child's knee with a cartoon bandage and whispered something that made the tears vanish. Damien watched quietly. Something in his chest tightened, not unpleasantly, but alarmingly human. Later, when the chaos faded and the last child waved goodbye, Mei Lin found him still there, sleeves rolled up, helping stack chairs. "You're not bad at manual labor," she teased. "Don't tell anyone," he said. "I have a reputation to protect." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Why did you really come, Mr. Tan?" He met her eyes. "Because curiosity can be more dangerous than greed." She smiled softly. "Then I hope you're satisfied." "I'm not," he admitted. "Not even close." For a long moment, neither spoke. The noise of the city returned faintly, cars, distant thunder, but in that courtyard, time seemed to pause. When she finally laughed, it broke the tension like a song. "You really are strange, Mr. Tan." "So are you, Ms. Ong." And as she walked away, humming again, Damien realized something that unsettled him more than any market crash or corporate betrayal. His experiment had started to test the wrong person. The hum of the city was softer tonight, a lull between storms. From his study, Damien watched the Marina Bay skyline pulse with light. Below, ships drifted like lanterns on the water, calm and indifferent. He should have felt the same. Instead, he kept replaying the sight of Mei Lin's clown nose slipping off as she laughed with the children. James cleared his throat. "Sir, I have the updated transaction reports." Damien gestured for him to continue, though his eyes stayed on the horizon. Hashtag Vivian. Vivian Lau's name appeared first on the list. The influencer's purchases read like a poem to excess. Private suite, designer wardrobe, rooftop gala reservation. Every item tagged with a price that glittered. Damien could almost hear her voice from memory, bright, rehearsed, and hollow. Across the city, Vivian leaned over her phone, filming herself against a view of the bay. "Generosity," she declared to the camera, "is the highest form of glamour." Her assistant clapped softly on cue. When she posted the clip, hearts bloomed across the screen. She smiled at the reflection. What she really saw wasn't compassion. It was relevance. In his penthouse, Damien exhaled through his nose. Predictable, he murmured. Hashtag, 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 hashtag Celeste. Next came Celestio, precision incarnate. Her spending summary looked disciplined. Seminars, networking brunches, self-improvement retreats. Every charge had an agenda. To an outsider, it might seem admirable. To Damien, it read like a resume audition. Celeste sat in a glass-walled meeting room downtown, surrounded by executives twice her age. The modern leader must invest in herself, she told them, tapping the table for emphasis. The black card flashed in her wallet as she paid the bill for everyone present. Influence was a game, and she intended to win by etiquette. When the waiter left, she opened her phone to check the stock tickers. The digits climbing there thrilled her far more than any human face around her. Hashtag, 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 hashtag Clarissa. Clarissa Lim's report was chaos dressed as sophistication. She'd hired an event designer to create an Art for Hope exhibition, half charity, half performance. The invoices glowed with imported champagne and a rented string quartet. She told journalists the proceeds would support creative youth, though none of the children knew they were supposed to be beneficiaries. Damien imagined her in that candlelit gallery, surrounded by mirrors and admirers. He could almost hear the applause already waiting for her. Hashtag, 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 hashtag Maylin. Then the final line, Maylin Ong. The column of transactions was brief: groceries, paints, balloons, hot dog buns, and yet the list filled the page with color. Damien leaned back. For cards, he said quietly, and only one that brought happiness. James looked at him over the tablet. You always said you didn't believe in happiness, sir. Apparently, I underestimated the supply chain. James smiled faintly but said nothing. He'd worked for Damien long enough to know when silence was wiser than agreement. The following morning, sunlight cut through the penthouse like a scalpel. Damien dressed without hurry, but his mind moved faster than his hands. The experiment was supposed to confirm what he already believed, that money revealed corruption like heat revealing metal flaws. Instead, one anomaly refused to fit the pattern. By noon, curiosity won again. He left the office claiming a site inspection and drove toward Toapeo. The community center still bore traces of the previous day's celebration. Ribbons tangled in branches, chalk drawings fading on the pavement. Inside, he found Mei Lin wiping tables while humming to herself. The smell of disinfectant mingled with leftover sweetness from the party. You work fast, he said from the doorway. She jumped slightly. Mr. Tan, you almost made me spill the mop water. Again. I've been told I have that effect. He stepped closer, noticing a smudge of paint on her cheek. You miss a spot. She rubbed it with the back of her hand, leaving a worse streak. Perfect. Now I look like modern art. He should have laughed. Instead, he found himself staring longer than he meant to. You didn't need to come here, she said. Unless you're conducting phase 2 of your experiment? I'm following up on the results. Well, she said, stacking plates. If you're measuring smiles per dollar, I think we broke the chart yesterday. Something in her voice, light, certain, made him wish he'd been there from the start instead of watching from the shadows. That evening, back at the penthouse, Damien hosted the scheduled board dinner. Celeste stood near the balcony discussing market strategy with investors. Clarissa arrived late. Shimmering in silver, Vivian floated in with a camera crew and an excuse about documenting modern philanthropy. The three women filled the room with laughter too sharp, perfume too heavy, ambition too obvious. Yet in the noise Damien heard only the absence of Maylin's off-key humming. When Vivian raised a toast to the power of generosity, he saw the black card glitter between her fingers like a trophy. He wondered how a gesture meant to test honesty had become another accessory. After the guests left, James lingered by the door. You look miles away tonight. Maybe I was... You're thinking about her. Damien didn't answer. The reflection in the window offered him no disguise. The next morning, Mei Lin arrived as usual, pushing her cart of cleaning supplies. She paused when she saw him still in the same suit, tie undone, coffee gone cold. Didn't sleep? She asked. I had numbers to review. Numbers or regrets? He glanced up, surprised. "You're bold for a housekeeper." "And you're human for a statue," she replied, unbothered. "Everyone's got a first time." He almost smiled again, then his phone buzzed. A message from Vivian. An invitation to the gala Clarissa was hosting that night. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. "Go," Mei Lin said lightly. "Rich people need their social vitamins." "I might," he admitted, "but maybe not tonight. Suit yourself. I'll be here fighting with the vacuum cleaner. It's losing enthusiasm." He left before he could change his mind. That night, he went anyway. Clarissa's gala glimmered inside the converted museum hall. Crystal lights, velvet gowns, laughter that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Paintings hung like expensive secrets. Vivian posed for cameras. Celeste networked in perfect posture. To them, this was victory. Damien watched from a distance, unseen. Every conversation felt scripted, every smile rehearsed. He realized, with an ache he couldn't quite name, that the only real laughter he'd heard all week belonged to a woman who didn't own a single designer thing. When Vivian finally approached him, wine glass in hand, she purred. "So, how did I score on your little game?" He frowned. "Game? Oh, come on, Damien. A mysterious black card? No limits? You think I wouldn't guess? I played beautifully." He didn't answer. Behind her, photographers flashed, catching every angle. He suddenly felt tired of light that didn't warm anything. Vivian tilted her head. "You used to enjoy being tested too, remember?" He stepped back. "Not anymore." He returned home close to midnight. The penthouse was dark, except for a small glow from the kitchen. Mei Lin was there, packing leftovers into containers. "You're still awake," he said. "I promised to save you dumplings," she answered. "You didn't come home for dinner. I was at Clarissa's gala." "Oh." Her tone was neutral, but her hands paused for half a second before resuming. "How was the kingdom of champagne and tiny forks?" "Loud," he said. "And empty." She smiled faintly. "That's a poetic review. You should write that on your next investor brochure." He leaned against the counter, watching her. "You could have spent that card on anything, you know." "I did. On other people." She looked up. "Isn't that the point of having more than you need?" He had no reply. The clock on the wall ticked softly between them. Later, when she'd gone and the apartment settled into silence, Damien found a black envelope she returned earlier that day. Inside was a card and a single note in her handwriting. "Some things are worth more when you don't buy them." He read the line twice, then slipped the note into his wallet beside his own identification. Proof, perhaps, that he was starting to remember what kind of man he wanted to be. Outside, Singapore shimmered in midnight silver, reflections trembling across the bay. For the first time in years, Damien Ten didn't feel like the one observing the world. He felt like the one being quietly, mercifully changed by it. Morning light spilled across the penthouse in thin gold bands. Damien hadn't opened a single message yet, but he already knew the tone of the day. The city had that hush before storm. His phone, face down on the marble counter, kept buzzing. 3 vibrations, pause, 2 more. A rhythm of alarm. James arrived precisely at 8, holding a tablet like a shield. "Sir, we have a situation." Damien looked up from his untouched coffee. Define situation. Someone leaked information about the experiment. The media is calling it the black card scandal. There's a photo of Vivian holding one of the cards. It's everywhere. For a second, Damien said nothing. Only the slow breath through his nose betrayed movement. How did they even... Vivian posted a behind-the-scenes clip last night. James interrupted, grim. She captioned it, "When generosity meets genius." She tagged you, the company, the whole city. A muscle twitched in Damien's jaw. Of course she did. "There's more," James said. "Clarissa gave an interview this morning. She implied the cards were a loyalty test for women in your circle." Damien's grip tightened around the coffee cup until porcelain protested. "So now I'm a game show host." "Essentially, yes." James scrolled. Social feeds are divided between outrage and fascination. Everyone's speculating who the fourth woman is. The name he dreaded hung unsaid. Damien felt it like a bruise. "Where's Mei Lin?" he asked. She clocked in as usual. "Refused interviews at the service entrance," she said, and I quote, "I clean floors, not reputations." Despite the knot forming in his chest, Damien almost smiled. Typical Mei Lin, blunt, grounded, unshakably herself. "Keep her away from reporters," he said. "No statements. I'll handle this." James hesitated. "With respect, sir, if you don't address it soon, others will shape the story for you." By noon, headlines had multiplied. The millionaire and his test subjects. Love, lies, and limitless cards. Who was the mystery housekeeper? Each line felt like sandpaper against Damien's composure. He had spent a lifetime building an empire of precision. Now gossip was the architect of his downfall. Downstairs, Mei Lin continued her rounds, vacuum humming, earbuds in. She'd heard enough snatches of conversation to piece together what had happened. The other staff avoided her kindly, the way people avoid a cliff edge. When she finally switched off the machine, silence roared in its place. She leaned on the handle, heart thudding. So that was it. She had been part of some grand theory about human nature. She had suspected as much, but seeing her name paired with headlines about billionaire experiments felt different. It wasn't embarrassment that stung. It was a thought that maybe he had never trusted her sincerity at all. At noon, every large screen in the central business district flickered with the same feed. Glossy footage from Clarissa Lim's gala, edited overnight into a special feature. The host's voice purred through studio speakers. What began as an act of generosity by tech magnate Damien Tan has become Singapore's newest obsession. For black cards, unlimited credit, and 4 very different women. The camera cut to Clarissa, radiant in her silver gown, laughing lightly. "It was never about money," she said, eyes glistening just enough. "It was about trust. And what happens when someone powerful forgets that others have hearts too?" Damien muted the screen before his own name appeared in the subtitle. He didn't need to hear the rest. He could already imagine the rehearsed indignation that followed. Beside her in the montage was Vivian, flanked by reporters outside her boutique. "I was part of something experimental," she declared. "But honestly, it's time we ask, why do men think generosity give them permission to play God?" The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. She smiled like a star born from Scandal. In the shadows of the penthouse, James stood a cautious distance away as Damien read through statements from the board's legal team. "They want you to release an apology," James said. "Frame it as a social experiment gone wrong, an error in judgment." Damien didn't answer immediately. His eyes traced the rain sliding down the glass. "And Mei Lin, she's getting calls from tabloids offering money for an exclusive. She's refused everyone." He nodded slowly. "She'll be blamed next." "You could stop that," James said quietly. "Go public. Tell them she had nothing to do with the concept." "That would drag her deeper," Damien said. "The public doesn't care about truth. They care about the next headline." "So you'll do nothing?" "For now." The decision tasted bitter even as he said it. Mei Lin, at the service lift. Mei Lin stared at her reflection in the brushed metal doors. Her phone buzzed nonstop, each vibration a reminder that the world suddenly had an opinion about her. She didn't open any of the messages. Only one mattered, and it hadn't come. The lift doors opened to a delivery boy holding flowers, an extravagant bouquet of imported lilies. "For Miss Ong," he said cheerfully. She blinked. "From who?" He shrugged. "Card just says, 'To the kindest heart in a cruel test.'" It should have made her smile. It didn't. The scent was too sweet, the gesture too polished. She set the bouquet aside and went back to cleaning. Scrubbing, she decided, was the only honest action left in the world. Meanwhile, Vivian live-streamed a Q&A to thousands of followers, sipping champagne. "So yes," she said with perfect poise, "I was chosen because I represent modern ambition. But I don't hold grudges. Damien taught me something. Money tests everyone, even the one giving it away." The comment feed exploded with hearts and hashtags. Clarissa, not to be outshone, announced a Truth in Generosity charity gala for the weekend. Celeste Yeo quietly unfollowed both women's accounts and turned off her phone. At dusk, Damien drove aimlessly along the East Coast Parkway, the city a blur of neon reflections. He'd spent his life predicting reactions, planning contingencies. Now every move felt wrong. When he finally stopped outside a quiet hawker center, he saw Mei Lin sitting alone at a plastic table, eating noodles from a paper bowl. No makeup, no performance, just her, staring into the middle distance. The sight grounded him more than the entire skyline ever could. He hesitated before approaching. She looked up, wary. "Mr. Tan," she said evenly. "You found me. I didn't mean to intrude. Reporters tried earlier. You're less persistent, I'll give you that." He sat opposite her. "You shouldn't have to hide." "I'm not hiding," she said. "I'm eating dinner." Big difference. There was silence, filled with the distant hiss of walks and traffic. "You didn't trust me," she said finally. He opened his mouth, closed it again. The truth was too complicated to fit inside an apology. "Maybe I didn't trust anyone," he said at last. "That's not an excuse," she replied quietly. "That's a confession." Her chopsticks clicked against the bowl. The sound felt final. At noon, every large screen in the central business district flickered with the same feed. Glossy footage from Clarissa Lim's gala, edited overnight into a special feature. The host's voice purred through studio speakers. What began as an act of generosity by tech magnate Damien Tan has become Singapore's newest obsession. For black cards, unlimited credit, and 4 very different women. The camera cut to Clarissa, radiant in her silver gown, laughing lightly. "It was never about money," she said, eyes glistening just enough. "It was about trust, and what happens when someone powerful forgets that others have hearts too." Damien muted the screen before his own name appeared in the subtitle. He didn't need to hear the rest. He could already imagine the rehearsed indignation that followed. Beside her in the montage was Vivian, flanked by reporters outside her boutique. "I was part of something experimental," she declared. "But honestly, it's time we ask, why do men think generosity gives them permission to play God?" The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. She smiled like a star born from scandal. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag in the shadows of the penthouse. James stood a cautious distance away as Damien read through statements from the board's legal team. "They want you to release an apology," James said. "Frame it as a social experiment gone wrong, an error in judgment." Damien didn't answer immediately. His eyes traced the rain sliding down the glass. "And Mei Lin, she's getting calls from tabloids offering money for an exclusive. She's refused everyone." He nodded slowly. "She'll be blamed next." "You could stop that," James said quietly. "Go public. Tell them she had nothing to do with the concept." "That would drag her deeper," Damien said. "The public doesn't care about truth. They care about the next headline. So you'll do nothing?" "For now." The decision tasted bitter even as he said it. At the service lift, Mei Lin stared at her reflection in the brushed metal doors. Her phone buzzed nonstop, each vibration a reminder that the world suddenly had an opinion about her. She didn't open any of the messages. Only one mattered, and it hadn't come. The lift doors opened to a delivery boy holding flowers, an extravagant bouquet of imported lilies. "For Miss Ong," he said cheerfully. She blinked. "From who?" He shrugged. "Card just says asterisk, to the kindest heart in a cruel test." Asterisk. It should have made her smile. It didn't. The scent was too sweet, the gesture too polished. She set the bouquet aside and went back to cleaning. Scrubbing, she decided, was the only honest action left in the world. Meanwhile, Vivian live-streamed a Q&A to thousands of followers, sipping champagne. "So, yes," she said with perfect poise, "I was chosen because I represent modern ambition, but I don't hold grudges. Damien taught me something. Money tests everyone, even the one giving it away." The comment feed exploded with hearts and hashtags. Clarissa, not be outshone, announced a Truth and Generosity charity gala for the weekend. Celeste Yeo quietly unfollowed both women's accounts and turned off her phone. At dusk, Damien drove aimlessly along the East Coast Parkway, the city a blur of neon reflections. He'd spent his life predicting reactions, planning contingencies. Now every move felt wrong. When he finally stopped outside a quiet hawker center, he saw Mei Lin sitting alone at a plastic table, eating noodles from a paper bowl. No makeup, no performance. Just her, staring into the middle distance. The sight grounded him more than the entire skyline ever could. He hesitated before approaching. She looked up, wary. "Mr. Tan," she said evenly. "You found me. I didn't mean to intrude. Reporters tried earlier. You're less persistent. I'll give you that." He sat opposite her. "You shouldn't have to hide." "I'm not hiding," she said. "I'm eating dinner. Big difference." There was silence, filled with the distant hiss of walks and traffic. "You didn't trust me," she said finally. He opened his mouth, closed it again. The truth was too complicated to fit inside an apology. "Maybe I didn't trust anyone," he said at last. "That's not an excuse," she replied quietly. "That's a confession." Her chopsticks clicked against the bowl. The sound felt final. Plus, 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 plus. By the next morning, the tone of the coverage had changed. What had been playful gossip was now accusation. A tabloid headline splashed across breakfast kiosks. "Housekeeper at the heart of the billionaire scandal. From rags to riches?" Inside the mystery woman who may have influenced Damien Tan's risky experiment. They had her old address, pictures from her social media account, quotes twisted from neighbors who barely remembered her. The implication was clear. She had used him, or at the very least, benefited from his attention. James placed the paper on the desk. "It's getting ugly." Damien read the line twice, jaw tight. "Call the communications team. I want an official statement drafted, simple, factual." "What will it say?" "That Mei Lin On performed her duties professionally and had no involvement in any company initiative." James hesitated. "That protects you more than her." Damien didn't reply. Silence settled between them like dust. He knew the words would sound sterile, safe, and utterly wrong. Yet saying anything warmer would invite every speculation imaginable. In the following hours, Clarissa's gala preparations turned into a media circus. Invitations were rewritten to mention a conversation about transparency and wealth. Vivian confirmed she would co-host. Their publicists fed the frenzy. Celeste sent Damien a discreet message. "Withdraw quietly. Let it fade." She meant well. She always did. He stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. When he finally stepped out of the elevator into the penthouse, he heard the vacuum again. Mei Lin was on her knees, scrubbing the edge of a marble step. Her movements were deliberate, like someone trying to clean away thought itself. He said her name. She didn't look up. "I've seen the headlines," he said. "They'll move on soon." She kept working. "Do you believe them?" "No." "Then say that out loud. To them, not just to your coffee mug." He took a step closer. "Every word I say will amplify the noise." "Silence is its own noise, Mr. Tan." She rose, meeting his eyes. "It tells people I'm not worth defending." He had no argument, only the flicker of shame behind his measured expression. That evening, the board convened in the top-floor conference room. City lights stretched beneath the glass like an ocean of data. The chairman, a man twice Damien's age, cleared his throat. "Your judgment has always been sharp, Damien, but this incident threatens the brand's integrity. Investors are nervous." Damien listened without expression. "I'll manage it." "Manage it how?" "By protecting a housekeeper over a multi-billion-dollar corporation." He felt every eye on him. In the reflection of the window, the skyline seemed to wait for his answer. When the meeting ended, he remained seated while the others filed out. James lingered. "She'll be fine," James said gently. "People forget fast." "Do you?" Damien asked. James shook his head. "Not when it matters." At midnight, Damien drafted the statement himself. He deleted and rewrote it until only one line remained. No one should be punished for kindness. He sent it to his communications director before he could think better of it. Then he walked down to the service corridor. The lights were dim, the air heavy with the scent of detergent. Mei Lin was there, boxing up supplies. Tomorrow, he said. I'm in an experiment publicly. She looked up, wary. You don't have to fix this for me. I'm not, he said. I'm fixing it because I finally understand what I broke. For the first time in days, something softened in her face. Not forgiveness yet, just the possibility of it. He turned to leave, but she called after him. Mr. Tan, you can't control what people believe, she said, but you can show them who you are. He nodded once. Then that's what I'll do. As he stepped back into the lift, the city lights shimmered below like a million silent witnesses. The test had started as a measure of others. Now it was his own heart on trial. The city woke to a headline that no one expected. On every major feed, the same image repeated. Damien Tan, standing behind a podium, expression unarmored. The caption read, "No one should be punished for kindness. D. Tan." No PR filters, no company logo, just those 8 words in stark white text. When a video of his brief statement aired, it lasted less than 2 minutes. There were no excuses, no explanations. Only a man acknowledging that he had misjudged his own experiment. I thought I could measure sincerity, he said quietly. But sincerity doesn't need measurement. It needs trust. The press room, used to corporate bravado, sat in rare silence. Every participant in the test acted freely, he continued, and one of them reminded me that the worth of an act lies not in its cost, but in its intent. For that, I owe her more than an apology. I owe her respect. He didn't say Mei Lin's name, but he didn't need to. By afternoon, everyone in Singapore knew who her was. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some called it graceful. Others called it a calculated move. Hashtags surged, debates flared. Vivian's follower count spiked again as she announced she was proud of his honesty. Clarissa claimed the apology vindicated her campaign for ethical transparency. And through it all, Mei Lin sat in a cafe off Bales Tier Road, staring at the muted television above the counter. Damien's voice came through the subtitles, still and calm. Around her, people whispered. "That's her, isn't it?" Someone murmured. "She looks ordinary." Maybe that's why he trusted her. Mei Lin finished her coffee and left the coins neatly under the saucer. She walked out into the humid air, uncertain whether the ache in her chest was relief or dread. At Tan Holdings, inside the boardroom that same afternoon, tension buzzed like static. Investors were split. Some applauded the sincerity. Others feared the fallout. James stood near the window while Damien fielded calls, voice steady, almost detached. When the last call ended, James said, "You just threw away half your armor in front of the world." Damien looked out at the skyline. "Armor's heavy. I was tired." James smiled faintly. "And the housekeeper? She won't speak to me. Give her time." "I gave her a reason not to," Damien said. "Now I have to earn one back." He turned back to the window. From this height, the harbor shimmered like glass. Somewhere below, in the messy, honest streets, Mei Lin was probably still refusing interviews, still being herself. And for the first time since the scandal began, Damien realized he wanted nothing more than to walk there too, without the glass, without the distance. By evening, Marina Bay was washed in a soft orange glow. The city seemed to hold its breath after a day of noise. Damien left the office on foot, ignoring the driver waiting at the curb. The walk was long and humid, but for once he needed to feel the ground. He stopped in a narrow street of shop houses where the light from cafes spilled onto wet pavement. A bell rang as he stepped inside one of them. Mei Lin was there behind the counter, tying a box for an elderly customer. She looked up, startled. "You again?" "I was hoping for good coffee," he said. "This place only sells tea." Then tea. He took a seat near the window. She finished with the customer before approaching, wiping her hands on a towel. "You've been busy," she said. "So have you. You changed jobs." "Just helping a friend. People keep calling my apartment." Her tone was light, but her eyes were guarded. He nodded. "I didn't mean for any of this to touch you." "I know." A pause. "But it did." He met her gaze. "Did you see the statement?" "I did." "And?" She shrugged. You told the truth. That's something. It cost a few directors. Then maybe it bought back a piece of yourself. For the first time that day, he breathed out without feeling the weight of the world on his lungs. They sat in silence while rain began to trace lines down the window. The shop was nearly empty. Only the softness of water and the rustle of tea leaves filled the air. You once told me generosity is dangerous, she said. Do you still believe that? It's dangerous when it's used to measure worth. But when it's given freely, he hesitated. Maybe it saves people. Her smile was small but genuine. That sounds like a lesson someone paid a high price to learn. He nodded, worth every cent. When the rain stopped, they stepped outside together. The street smelled of wet earth and jasmine from a nearby stall. Damien held out his umbrella. Can I walk you home? You don't have to. I want to. They walked without speaking, their reflections moving side by side in puddles that mirrored the streetlights. For once, Damien didn't rush ahead or plan the next move. He simply matched her pace. At her block's entrance, she turned to him. What happens now, Mr. Tan? I stop testing people, he said, and start trusting them. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. That's a good start. He smiled faintly. May I see you again? Maybe when you stop calling me Ms. Ong. Deal. She climbed the steps, pausing once to wave before disappearing inside. Damien stood there until the light in her window flicked on, a small square of gold in the dark. Epilogue of the chapter. Back in his penthouse later that night, Damien placed the 4 black cards on the table. 3 gleamed untouched, symbols of excess and vanity. The 4th, Mei Lin's, was clean, unbent, but different. He took a pen and wrote across it in neat black ink. Experiment concluded. He slid it into a drawer and closed it gently. For the first time in months, he turned off every screen, opened the balcony doors, and let the night air in. Below, the city lights shimmered like constellations waiting to be named. He realized he didn't need to map them anymore. Somewhere, in a small flat across the river, a woman who sang off-key was probably humming again. And for once, that sound, imagined, distant, imperfect, was enough. 6 weeks later, the city had learned to look away. Headlines had moved on to a new scandal, new faces. In Singapore, fame and outrage both aged quickly in the heat. What remained were quieter ripples, whispers at Tan Holdings had survived, that Damien Tan had changed. From the street, the company's glass facade still gleamed immaculate, but inside, the rhythm was different. Damien had returned to the office without the retinue that once surrounded him. He greeted the reception staff by name, walked his own coffee to meetings, and sometimes, to everyone's astonishment, smiled first. He'd kept one ritual, though. Every morning before reviewing reports, he opened the small drawer in his desk. The 4 black cards lay there like fossils of a different man. The one marked experiment concluded reminded him that perfection was overrated and trust had to be rebuilt one act at a time. At noon, he joined a small press conference, not to talk about profits, but to announce a new community program. Tan Holdings will partner with local charities to sponsor apprenticeships, he said simply. We can't erase mistakes, but we can learn from them. Reporters exchanged surprised glances. No slogans, no gloss. The simplicity itself became news. Afterward, James met him outside. So you're a philanthropist now? Trying to be a responsible adult, Damien said. It's harder than it looks. James chuckled. There's someone you should invite to the opening event. Already thought of her, Damien replied. The first project launched in Toa Peo, where an old community center was being renovated into a creative learning space. Damien arrived in rolled-up sleeves, ignoring the cameras. The noise of saws and paint cans filled the hall. Volunteers moved in cheerful chaos. And there she was, Mei Lin, kneeling beside a bucket of brushes, hair tied back with bandana, humming under her breath. She looked up, startled, then smiled cautiously. You're volunteering now? She asked. I'm an intern, he said, learning from the experts. You'll need better shoes for this internship. I'll add that to my training plan. They stood there for a heartbeat longer than politeness required. Then both laughed softly. The tension that shadowed their earlier encounters had thinned. What remained was something gentler. They spent the afternoon painting. Damien's strokes were uneven, deliberate. Mei Lin's were quick. Sure. Every so often their brushes met at the edge of a wall, colors blending. When she turned to hand him a roller, their fingers brushed, an accident small enough to ignore, but neither did. Careful, she said. You'll get paint on your watch. It's only a watch. 2 months ago you'd have said it was Swiss craftsmanship. 2 months ago I was more foolish. She smiled. Growth suits you. The sun dipped lower, turning the hall's fresh paint a deeper shade of gold. Damien stepped back to admire the wall they had finished. A single patch near the corner still showed the old color beneath. You missed a spot, Mei Lin said, pointing. I was testing to see if you'd notice, he replied. You're terrible at experiments. True, he said, smiling, but better at admitting when I am. She shook her head, laughing. You sound like one of those motivational posters. Before he could answer, a foreman hurried in from the courtyard, phone in hand. Mr. Tan, sorry to bother you. Our shipment of electrical fixtures just got delayed. Without them, we can't open on Saturday. Damien frowned. How bad? Bad. The supplier says next week at the earliest. He nodded slowly. All right, I'll see what can be done. Mei Lin wiped her hands. My cousin works maintenance for a hotel downtown. He might have surplus stock from their last refit. Wouldn't that be bending rules? Maybe just teaching them yoga. She grinned. Let me call him. Within an hour, her cousin arrived with boxes of fittings, laughing that his little sister had bullied him into philanthropy. The volunteers cheered. Damien looked at her across the noisy hall, struck by the ease with which she turned obstacles into opportunities. When the lights finally flicked on, casting a warm glow across the newly painted walls, the crowd applauded spontaneously. Damien raised an eyebrow. I think we're back on schedule. Mei Lin crossed her arms, mock serious. Next time you have a crisis, remember the housekeeper saved you. I intend to, he said quietly. A few days later, the center opened. Reporters came, but the tone was different. No scandal, no intrusion. Children ran between tables stacked with art supplies. Damien gave a short speech about second chances. When he stepped down, he found Mei Lin watching from the back, a paint smudge still on her sleeve. Not bad, she said. You managed sincerity without a teleprompter. He laughed. I had a good teacher. Who? You. She looked away, embarrassed but pleased. You're learning. That evening, after the crowd left, the two of them stayed behind to tidy up. The room was quiet except for the faint whir of ceiling fans. Mei Lin gathered stray ribbons. Damien stacked chairs. Outside, the street lights flickered on one by one. You ever think, she said, how strange it is that a mess can turn into something beautiful just because people decide to fix it? All the time, he answered. It's how I built most of my life. Except I used to fix the wrong things. She turned toward him. And now I'm trying to fix what matters. They stood in the middle of the half-lit hall, the scent of new paint and rain drifting through the open doors. For once, no cameras, no rumors, just the sound of the city breathing beyond the walls. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. You don't need to prove anything anymore. I know, he said, but I like to keep earning the chance to. Mei Lin smiled. Then start by locking up. The lights are still on. He laughed, reached for the switch, and the hall sank into darkness, except for the glow from the street outside, pale and steady, spilling it around them like a promise. Morning rain shimmered on the glass towers like melted silver. 3 months had passed since the apology that turned a scandal into a lesson, and for the first time in his adult life Damien Ten woke without a list of people to impress. He still lived in the same penthouse, but its silence no longer felt like armor. The rooms were simpler now. Half the art gone. The grand piano sold to fund a new scholarship wing at Horizon Home. When he crossed the marble floor barefoot toward the balcony, he could smell coffee from the little machine he finally learned to use himself. The routine was humbling and oddly comforting. Down below, Singapore pulsed in its usual rhythm. Morning traffic, 1,000 umbrellas, the scent of fried dough from the hawker stalls. He had learned to watch it not as a kingdom, but as a living thing he belonged to. On the dining table lay a stack of letters from students in the new apprenticeship program, handwritten notes with crooked drawings of turbines, robots, and dream houses. One envelope had a smear of blue paint on it. He smiled. Mei Lin had probably supervised that session. When James entered with the day's reports, Damien greeted him without the formality that once shaped every morning. "Any more investor drama?" he asked. "None," James said. "Turns out people forgive quickly when numbers look good. But you got a message from the Horizon Center. They're inviting you to the 3-month review." Damien nodded. "I'll go." James studied him a moment. "You used to delegate those." "I used to delegate too much." Damien closed a folder. "Besides, Mei Lin will be there." James smiled knowingly but didn't comment. "Then I'll make sure the car is ready." "Not the car," Damien said. "I'll take the train." James blinked. "The MRT?" "Why not? It runs on time." The train was crowded, humid, human. No tinted glass, no privacy. A toddler stared at him over a mother's shoulder, then offered half a biscuit. Damien accepted it solemnly, earning a giggle. The child's laughter drew smiles from nearby commuters, none of whom recognized him. Or they did. They pretended not to care. The anonymity felt like grace. By the time he reached Toapeo, the rain had stopped. The renovated Horizon Center stood bright and open, its new sign glinting against a sky still heavy with clouds. Children's voices spilled from inside like music. He found Mei Lin in a corner classroom, kneeling beside a group of students assembling solar-powered cars from discarded parts. Her short hair stuck out in uneven tufts, and her shirt bore at least 3 different colors of paint. She looked up and grinned. "You took public transport? Miracles do happen." He raised an eyebrow. "You track my movements?" "Please. It's all over social media. Someone posted a picture of you holding a biscuit on the MRT. So much for anonymity." "Welcome back to the real world," she said, handing him a screwdriver. "Make yourself useful." He joined the children, fumbling with the tiny screws while she gave instructions. For a moment, the billionaire and the housekeeper were just 2 volunteers trying to make sunlight move a toy car. The little vehicle jerked forward on its plastic wheels, and the kids cheered. Mei Lin clapped her hands. "See? Even the stubborn ones learn eventually." Damien smiled at the double meaning. "Are we talking about the car or me?" "Both." That evening, when the last child left, they sat outside on low steps, sharing a packet of noodles from a paper box. The street smelled of rain and sesame oil. "You know," she said, "these kids think you're some kind of wizard." "I prefer a reformed villain," he replied. She laughed. "Then you're their favorite one." He took a bite, then looked at her seriously. "You built something real here." "We built it," she corrected. "You gave us a space." "You gave it life." The conversation drifted into comfortable quiet. Somewhere above them, laundry lines swayed like banners between windows. Damien watched the city fade into 1,000 pinpoints of light and thought how, for once, he didn't need to own any of it to feel complete. The following week brought the kind of crisis that used to define Damien's life. A supplier defaulted. A partnership threatened to dissolve. Reporters scented a news story. For a day, the office hummed with the nervous energy he once thrived on. But the rhythm no longer fit him. He spent the morning in meetings, the old reflexes tugging at him. Command, control, calculate. Each time he caught himself. "Let's pause," he told the board, and the words felt foreign but right. "We'll find a solution that doesn't crush anyone to fix a spreadsheet." Afterward, James approached. "You're calmer than the markets, sir." Damien half smiled. "Panic's a habit. I'm trying to quit." Still, by dusk the familiar restlessness returned. The temptation to reclaim his old certainty was strong. The company was stable again. He could easily slip back into being the man who pulled every string. It would even feel heroic. Instead, he walked out of the building and took the MRT to Toapeo. At the Horizon Center, the lights were still on. Mei Lin sat cross-legged on the floor with a stack of notebooks. She looked up, surprised but not startled. "Rough day?" "Tempting day," he said, dropping beside her. The kind that whispers I'm indispensable. You believed it? For a few minutes. Well, congratulations, she said dryly. You're officially human again. He laughed. I came here to remind myself what matters. She handed him a brush. Then helped me repaint this section. The kids decided our mural needed more stars. He dipped the brush into the tin and began to scatter dots of white across the dark blue wall. The rhythm of it, the soft scrape of bristles, the scent of paint, steadied him. You ever miss your old life? She asked. Sometimes, he admitted, but it was like standing in a room full of mirrors. I saw myself everywhere and no one else at all. She nodded. Mirrors are shiny, but they don't keep you warm. When the wall was finished, they sat back to look at it. The stars were uneven, child-bright, perfect in their imperfection. Maylin tilted her head. They'll call you sentimental. They already do, he said. I can live with it. Good. Sentimental people are easier to work with. He looked at her. A question half formed in his mind, but she saved him the effort. Before you ask, she said, no, I'm not coming back to clean your penthouse. I like this job. I wasn't going to ask, he said quickly. I was going to offer something different. What's that? A partnership. The Horizon program needs a director. She blinked. You're serious. I'd rather you run it than any executive I know. I don't have a degree in management. You have credibility, the kind no school can issue. She studied him for a long moment. If I say yes, I'm not a symbol. I do this my way. That's the only way it'll work. Her smile was slow, cautious. Then maybe I'll think about it. They locked up the center together. Outside, a thin mist hung in the air, turning the streetlights into halos. Damien walked her home again, not out of obligation, but habit. At the corner near her block, she stopped. Promise me something, she said. Anything. Don't make this another test. I won't, he said. It's an invitation. Good. She held out her paint-streaked hand. He took it, briefly, a handshake that lingered a moment too long to be businesslike. A month later, the Horizon Center held its first open day festival. Children's paintings fluttered from strings, laughter echoed between the corridors, and the courtyard was crowded with families. The event wasn't grand, but it felt alive. No photographers staging shots, just people sharing food, color, and noise. Mei Lin moved through the crowd with a clipboard, hair tied back, sleeves rolled. When she spotted Damien carrying a box of donated books, she waved him toward the library corner. Careful, she called. Those are alphabet sets. Drop them, and you'll scramble the language. He set the box down. After what we survived, a little chaos won't scare me. She grinned. You sound almost carefree. I'm trying it out. He looked around. The walls glowed with the mural they had painted. The uneven stars, still bright. For the first time, he felt no urge to correct a thing. The mess was the point. That afternoon, the mayor visited to offer congratulations. Damien stayed in the background while Mei Lin handled the introductions. She spoke clearly, without notes, her voice carrying over the hum of the crowd. This place exists because someone decided that a mistake could become a beginning. She said, every hand here, rich, poor, young, old, helped build it. That's the only kind of wealth that lasts. The applause that followed was real, not polite. Damien felt pride bloom quietly under his ribs. When she stepped down from the small platform, he caught her eye and mouthed, thank you. She answered with a small, wordless nod. As evening fell, the volunteers cleaned up. Mei Lin found Damien stacking chairs and offered him a paper cup of tea. Still volunteering, she teased. Still learning. They carried the last boxes to the storeroom, the sound of children fading outside. When they returned to the hall, only the string lights remained, glowing like captured constellations. Remember our first wall? She asked. I remember missing a spot. You left it on purpose, didn't you? He smiled. To remind myself that perfection doesn't leave room for anyone else. She looked at him for a long moment. You really have changed. So have you. Maybe we both just found where we belong. They stepped out into the night. The air was warm, the city quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. A bus passed, splashing through a puddle, and for a second the reflections of the streetlights danced across their shoes. Damien stopped at the gate. When I started all this, he said, I thought control was power. Now I think power is the ability to let things grow on their own. Mei Lin smiled. Then let this grow too. He looked at her, unsure whether she meant the program, the friendship, or the feeling that had slowly taken root between them. Perhaps all of it. He didn't need a definition. He simply nodded. They walked together toward the junction, their steps unhurried. Overhead, clouds broke apart, revealing a few faint stars, the same uneven ones they had painted on the wall inside. Weeks later, a small plaque appeared at the entrance of the Horizon Center. It read, "Built by many hands," dedicated to the belief that kindness is never a mistake. Visitors often asked who wrote the line. No one could agree. Some said the woman who ran the place. Others said the businessman who refused to be called a savior. Both names were on the donor list, side by side, with no titles attached. Every evening, when the last child left and the lights dimmed, Mei Lin would stand by the doorway, listening to the faint echo of laughter. Sometimes down the street, she saw Damien waiting at the corner with 2 cups of tea. He never called out. He simply waited until she noticed, and together they would walk home through the soft Singapore night.